Video games may seem harmless enough, but you really should keep a firm anchor in reality before you play, because video games in the wrong hands are just as deadly as, well, anything else. Tyrone Spellman was a man who took his video games very seriously. It seemed like any other day when Tyrone woke up on September 7th, 2006 and wasted little time before hopping onto the couch and firing up his Xbox 360. He began playing Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon and was killing enemies left and right, but these weren't the only lives he'd claim that day. Tyrone was home with his girlfriend Mia Turman, who was still asleep in the bedroom, and their daughter Aaliyah, who was only 17 months old and was learning to explore and experience anything she could get her tiny hands on. Unfortunately, one of these things was the power cord of Tyrone's Xbox. Giving it a tug, the console unplugged and tipped, crashing onto the floor. Tyrone was shocked, believing that his daughter had broken his $600 gaming console. But shock turned rapidly into rage, and with all inhibitions out the window, Tyrone snapped, rushed over to his daughter, and began punching her in the face and head. He punched the girl so hard that a piece of her skull had broken off. He then grabbed her and threw her into a chair. Tyrone attempted to cover up what he had done by claiming Aaliyah had fallen and hit her head, but investigations determined the real truth, and Tyrone eventually confessed. Tyrone was charged with third-degree murder and sentenced to 22.5 to 45 years in prison. Sadly, this could have easily been avoided, as an autopsy showed that Aaliyah had sustained a broken arm 2 weeks prior to her death under questionable circumstances. But despite 2 social workers coming to check on Aaliyah's welfare, no one seemed to notice. Paying monthly to access online games is never fun. You can either go into your wallet and pony up the dough, or you can just not play. Or you could do what this next person did. In 2007, a 13-year-old boy named Don from Vietnam was especially desperate to engage in his long, fun-fueled online gaming sessions, but those pesky monthly fees pushed him to new lengths as he quickly found himself without any money to fund his gaming habits. He knew he needed a quick and simple way to make some money, so he did something not many 13-year-olds do. He decided to rob an elderly woman for the money. There wasn't much detail on how Don initiated the horrendous act, but what is known is that Don confronted an 81-year-old woman. He came equipped with a length of rope, and in order to keep the woman from protesting his actions, he decided to strangle her to death with the rope. He then stole the equivalent to a little over $6 American from her and buried her body in a pile of sand in front of his house. Eventually, Don was found out and arrested, and he confessed to police his motives for killing the woman. While he was too young to go to prison, he was sent to a re-education camp, which was likely to release him as long as he practiced good enough behavior. It's unknown if he has already been released back into the public. Farmville, one of those games people either obsessively love or absolutely hate. Alexandra Tobias was a 22-year-old mother who was one of the obsessed players of Farmville, who was more than likely wanted dead for the numerous invites she sent her friends on a regular basis. But Alexandra wasn't the victim. In January of 2010, Alexandra was logged into Facebook and clicking away at Farmville, doing her best to ignore her 3-month-old son, Dylan. The thing about babies, however, is that they tend to cry when they're ignored for too long. In fact, they cry over just about anything, and this was something that Alexandra found as an immense annoyance, as it kept mentally pulling her out of her immersive Farmville experience. After some time of Dylan loudly crying, Alexandra had had enough with the interruptions. She swiftly grabbed Dylan and shook him hard before stopping, because she either realized she was a terrible mother or simply because her arms were getting tired. She went outside, smoked a cigarette, composed herself, walked back inside to play more Farmville, but instead decided to shake Dylan violently again. Dylan suffered brain damage and died as a result. Alexandra claimed that Dylan might have struck his head on something while he was being shaken, which could have contributed to his death. Alexandra pled guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 50 years in prison. Grand Theft Auto is a series of games that admittedly makes crime quite a lot of fun, and for that reason, a lot of parents hate it. The parents of two American teenagers, William and Joshua Buckner, probably hate it more than most anyone else. It was 2003, and Will, aged 16, and Josh, aged 14, like so many other gamers, loved Grand Theft Auto. But these two seemed entirely unable to discern virtually killing people in the streets with actually killing people in the streets. The brothers wanted to replicate their gaming experience in real life, as they were so impressed with the fun they had playing the game itself. On June 25th of 2003, Will and Josh traveled to Interstate 40 in Tennessee and brought along a .22 caliber rifle. Once there, they began freely shooting at people driving by. This resulted in several people sustaining serious injuries. One 45-year-old man named Aaron Hamill was struck in the side of the head while driving back from a trip with his cousin, which resulted in the car being sent off the road and into a guardrail. His cousin became frantic after seeing the wound in the side of Aaron's head. She quickly reassured him that she was okay and that she loved him and would make sure all of his pets were well taken care of. Aaron died shortly after. The two brothers were each charged with reckless homicide, aggravated assault, and reckless endangerment, and pled guilty to the charges. The two boys were remorseful of their actions, and Aaron's family filed a lawsuit against the game's publisher. Will and Josh were both sent to a juvenile detention center, but have both since been released when they reached 19 years of age, as Tennessee law prohibits juveniles from being kept in custody after that point. There's no doubt about it, playing online games with people can be absolutely enraging, but the fact that we are separated from each other keeps us from doing stupid things. But that separation was only temporary for a Ukrainian player of Lineage 2. Alexandra Ponamorenko was one of the most hardcore players of the game, a game which involves forming guilds or clans in a medieval world. It's no surprise that guilds hold a certain level of hatred for one another, and Alexander hated his rivals perhaps more than any other. 20 to 30 Lineage 2 players met up in a cafe in Moscow in January of 2007. It was there that Alexander saw his arch nemesis in real life, a man only known as Kirill. The two immediately got into a confrontation and took what was going to be a brutal fight outside of the cafe. While the two fought, one of Kirill's friends rushed out in an attempt to calm Alexander down. Alexander suddenly wailed the man in the face, sending him to the ground. He then promptly lifted his foot and stomped it down on the man's head, resulting in considerable brain damage, which later claimed the man's life. It is believed that Alexander received a mere 15 years in prison for the murder. Thank you for watching. Don't miss out on my last video where I answer questions and explain how to survive a kidnapping. You can press on screen now to watch it or go into the description below and there's a link down there for you. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to my channel because you won't want to miss what's next. And I'll see you next Wednesday.